Welcome to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos, where industry leaders share their thoughts and experience on the future of space business, policy, and opportunity. If you like Constellations, please support us by giving a rating and review on iTunes. And don't forget to share this podcast online to help our community grow.
Welcome to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos. My name is John Gilroy, and I'll be your moderator. Today, we welcome Jono Luk, the Vice President of Product Management at Webex. Deep space communication is becoming an important topic with the upcoming launch of NASA's Artemis 1 mission to the moon. The mission will be the first test of video collaboration technology off-planet. Future stages of the mission will have astronauts returning to the lunar surface by 2024, paving the way for a long-term lunar presence and serving as a stepping stone on the way to Mars. You know, John and I both watch TV shows, and TV shows make communication in space look easy, you know. The reality is very different. Engaging in visual collaboration with a spacecraft that is more than 240,000 miles away is a real challenge and requires extensive knowledge across networking, security, encryption to ensure a successful experience. During this episode, Jono Luk, Vice President of Product Management at Webex, will discuss the difficulties of video communication in deep space and explain how these issues can be overcome to support NASA's Artemis program. So, Jono, when you were a kid, you were watching sci-fi with your dad and dreamt of this job, didn't you?
I sure did. This is literally the dream project and dream job, working with all these people.
Yeah, it sounds like really fun. I'm kind of jealous being the kind of spokesman that you are about this whole topic. It's just great. Well, NASA's just up the road for us in Washington, D.C. Can you tell us a bit about NASA's Artemis 1 mission and the need for video collaboration in deep space?
Absolutely, John. And you actually already hit on this a little bit. The Artemis missions are about getting man or humans back into space, right, with NASA. As part of this, we actually have what we're calling the Callisto Project. That's a technology demonstration. It's an opportunity for us to bring what we might think of as everyday tech, something you might have on your phone, for example, and powering a whole new way of space exploration. And video in particular, we're social animals. I want to see John, right? John needs to see John as we communicate. We have hand gestures. Video is a key part of that connection back home. You threw that number out, 240,000 plus miles. It's a long way. Space is cold. And you want that visual to help create and maintain that connection with loved ones, your support staff and others. But there's more to it than just that. It's not just seeing people, it's seeing things. As we do science exploration and there's experiments happening, we want to be able to see what's going on out there. So as scientists here on Earth can suggest a next idea, do this, rotate that, so that the experiment can continue on. What might take a day or 2-day round trip to get information can happen, quote unquote, nearly instantaneously, thanks to things like video collaboration.
What's amazing, before this podcast began, I kind of joked, Earth to Jono, you're still on Mars? Well, in the real world, it would take 15 minutes for that signal to get all the way to Mars. I mean, just put that in perspective when we talk about communications and talk about latency and delays. What a huge problem to overcome, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Now, this is a collaborative approach. Who else is working with you on this Callisto project?
Yeah, so Callisto is actually a partnership with Lockheed Martin, Amazon Alexa, and Webex by Cisco. So the three of us came together and created what is now, you can see, it's actually a blue unit sitting at the front of the Orion capsule. And in that unit is, first of all, Amazon Alexa, providing voice command. So instead of having to go to a panel, look through 400 data points and find the rotational velocity of a component or the temperature of a particular module, I can ask using voice, right? That reduces the time to get the information. It makes it easier, and I'm hands-free as well, so I can get more things done. Webex is the video and the connection between either the astronauts on the mission and in future missions, because Artemis 1 is unmanned, the astronauts on the mission and mission control, or as I said before, it could be classrooms connecting with the astronauts, scientists seeing the experiments, or scientists seeing some artifact. That's really how Callisto is, again, bringing these, what we think of as everyday technologies to bear to make deep space exploration that much better.
So you mentioned Orion. So how will NASA's Orion spacecraft communicate with Earth during this mission?
Yeah, so I can't take full credit. I mean, while Webex is the video platform that enables that communication, first of all, we are actually using NASA's Deep Space Network, right? You've probably seen these in movies, and this is a podcast, so you won't see my arms, but very large dishes, 70-meter dishes in some cases, situated around the world, firing off signals into space. That is the equivalent of our internet backbone, if you will, these satellites. What we're doing, right, was we've brought Webex into the mix such that there's Webex running here, on Earth in Houston, and also running up there on the Orion payload. And so those Webex endpoints, special built version, because this is space, right? It's a special network, allows that communication back and forth. I on Earth can see what's happening up there in the Orion capsule, and vice versa. When there will be humans, they'll be able to see the various scientists, the engineers, the VIPs. We will have people coming through mission control throughout the mission, saying hello to the crew. Again, reducing that loneliness, right? Keeping them in touch.
Well, ever since COVID, everyone on the planet is familiar with video communication. You do it every single day, getting sick of it. I'm getting sick of Zoom myself. So how is this video communication different in deep space?
So two things. The first, and I always make this joke, but when you and I are chatting right now, it's probably happening over some very fat fiber optic cables laid across the country. There aren't a million miles of fiber optic cable dragging behind this capsule, right? This is happening over radio waves, that deep space network. And so that is one of the most fundamental differences in deep space exploration and communication compared to Earth, the medium over which it happens. And fiber optic cables, they're sheathed. There's protection around it. So we maximize the reliability of that signal. When you're firing radio waves over space or the vacuum of space, anything can happen that can be disruptive. So that introduces potential for data corruption, data loss. Right, those types of challenges we haven't had to deal with here on Earth for so long. Back in the day of the modem, you worried about the noise, right? The noise came in, you suddenly lost your signal, your dial-up was lost. But for the last 10, 15 years, that's not a thing. But these are just simple realities. And the further you are, 100,000, 200,000, 1 million miles from Earth, there's that much more distance for these potential problems. The second is speed of light or the speed of the signal. These are 250 million or 250,000 miles of distance. It takes time that we don't have to deal with, latency we don't have to deal with here on Earth. And so the way we compute, the way that we account and sync up the video and the audio signal, it's just fundamentally different because of those variables.
A couple of years ago, we interviewed Vint Cerf, the father of the internet, and he's working with NASA's Deep Space Internet project right now. And I turned to Vint and I said, well, Vint, what is your biggest challenge? He said, well, my biggest challenge is the speed of light's too slow.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's above my pay grade. Maybe Jono can figure this one out. But when you deal with those type of problems, you're at an advanced level. So this is really advanced communication, isn't it?
It really is. And, the funny thing, I was talking to someone the other day. If I say something to you, John, today over a WebEx call, if you don't respond within like a second, I go, did you hear me? Did I come through? Did I cut out? We are so normalized to this sub-second latency. Here we're talking seconds or eventually minutes. And so all of those things just change. Again, those variables are just fundamentally different for us. And yes, this is some advanced stuff. Someday, somewhere, instantaneous communication would be fantastic.
Well, when I think of it, I think about the early days of the internet. Back in the mid-90s, there's a group of people got together in Paris and came up with a joint photographic experts group. And they came up with JPEG. It's compression. People down the hall came up with, guess what? MPEG, motion picture experts group. And so are there compression standards now? Are they different from space, or are they the same kind of compression used here?
Yeah, so I would say that the core compression technology used for space, as we're using it in WebEx, compared to what we might be using on our regular internet, they're actually not that different because compression is compression. The problem is you need to compress harder. You need to achieve better rates of compression. The analogy I use for kind of what we have to deal with is we're trying to take 2022 high definition video and cram that over what some of us may fondly remember as 2004 internet speeds, the day of the modem, right? We're taking 1 or 2 megabit per second video and trying to make that work in a 120 kilobit a second. That's not the total bandwidth of the NASA Deep Space Network, but that's how much can be afforded to our part of this mission and payload, right? Those are the kinds of problems where we are basing it on the technology available today. And it's really pushing us to do that much better, to do that much more.
Jono, thousands of people from all over the world have listened to this podcast. Go to Google and type in Constellations Podcast to get to our show notes page. Here, you can get transcripts for all 100 plus interviews. Also, you can sign up for free email notifications for future episodes. In the Navy, they have this thing called a shakedown cruise. So Captain Jono will take a ship out and bring it back in and have a list of corrections on there. I'm thinking about testing these video capabilities. Now, tell you what, Jono, I'll go to Mars tomorrow and we'll test out the link. What do you think? Okay, I mean, so how can these video communications capabilities be tested to ensure they'll work in deep space? I don't know what the test bed is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mention that. First of all, please don't go to Mars quite yet. I don't know we're ready for that. Okay. I don't know what to do for you if you're stuck out there. But coming back to the immediate, what we actually do is we have thanks to Lockheed Martin, our partner in the whole Callisto project, we have some very advanced test labs where they introduce, for example, high latencies into communication to simulate that here on Houston, talking to, the Orion capsule near the moon. So we can create those conditions that require us to handle the latency, or they can introduce a variety of network conditions, jitter, loss, et cetera. So again, we have to handle those. That's what we're doing regularly, right? These true end-to-end tests. In the same way the shuttle itself sits there in Florida and they do what they call their wet dress. That's a physical logistics hardware test of the shuttle. Well, we're doing the same equivalent for what we're doing with Callisto, right? That's more of a software, a digital and a network. That is the closest we can come to simulating those constraints, if you will, right? Or really the reality of space travel, and then seeing how well we do.
I want to play around with Tom Cruise quote. He famously said, "Show me the money." Well, in return, in regards to this particular situation, it's show me the video. I mean, and so can you provide an example of how real-time video would support the mission better in comparison to capabilities of the past? I mean, so we got new capabilities here. So why is it better and how can it improve the mission?
Absolutely. I mean, I would maybe categorize this into two types of scenarios where this will hopefully just revolutionize space exploration. The first is, I don't actually, hold on. John, do you know where square peg round hole comes from? Do you know where that saying comes from?
Apollo 13.
Apollo 13. And so, I mean, the Tom Hanks rendition of this, people are probably familiar with, they saw this on their screen, but when they had to switch capsules, the components are just fundamentally different. There's a square peg, there's a round hole. And so the carbon dioxide scrubbers just didn't fit. Well, back in the day of Apollo 13, this was over voice. I was telling you in mission control, this, that, the other. You couldn't see. Imagine if we had video. Imagine if people in Houston could see the component, could see as Buzz Aldrin or someone else was trying to make things fit, how much more effective that could be instead of you looking at a piece of paper, me looking at a piece of paper and guessing if we're talking the same thing, right? So that's one example of where seeing can lead to faster results, better results, ideally, right? That's the goal. The second is, as I kind of brought up earlier, this new generation of exploration. There have been 3,000 plus science experiments performed in the ISS since it went up into space, or rather was built in space. We can't send all those scientists into space, nor do they all want to go. I would love to go into space if anyone's listening. However, not everyone does. And so having video means that I, as the scientist on Earth, can see what's happening up there. I can see the interim results. We can course correct. John, could you change this one component to this particular setting so that we can continue the experiment, right? So I can provide that guidance to you so that we can get the most out of what is a not cheap science experiment. So those are two examples really of where seeing just leads to better results and faster results.
The example is right in front of your eyes. I'm looking at you on a video right now, and I say, I have a window behind me, you have a window behind me. Well, they're completely different types of windows. And for me to describe it verbally, it would take 20 minutes. It would do it instantly by knowing, oh, no, this is complete different. So that's right. Verbal communication.
The picture is worth 1,000 words is kind of the overused statement, but it's so true. Save me the 995 words, right? Let me just show you this thing.
Yeah. My motto is don't tell the story verbally, tell the story visually. So.
Absolutely.
Well, let's take a look and apply this back home here. Okay. So will any of these advances developed for the Callisto demonstration enable improved video back here on Earth?
Absolutely. So we're already seeing examples of this. So outside of the work that I do here with Callisto and our partners Lockheed and Amazon, one of my personal missions in life is to bring equity to people around the world. Healthcare is an area of passion for me. Underserved communities are an area of passion for me. I kind of give you this intro on Ramble because the compression technology we're doing to improve video, right? Making it such that very, very poor internet connectivity can now be leveraged for telehealth, education. We can take this and deploy it to the furthest, most remote regions of any country or continent. We can lift those people up no matter where they are and connect them to healthcare, education, whatever programs and support they need. That's just one really great example, of how the work that we're doing and pushing the envelope through Callisto is really going to drastically improve life here on Earth. And I'm hoping that's just the beginning of some of these things. As we move forward, we will look into how we can leverage holographic technology for space exploration. Why can't that make it better for deep space? Deep sea exploration, right? When I'm 7,000 feet underwater. So all of these things I'm hoping will really just forever change the way exploration is done.
Yeah, earlier I talked about JPEG and MPEG, but the compression we're using right now is built on that. And then the compression for Callisto is built on that. And each stage, you learn better ways to enhance communication. And so I think your line is make a million miles feel like one.
That's right.
Well, let's look into the future. Get out your crystal ball here. So, Jono, what are the implications for this technology demonstration for the Artemis program in terms of future goals for setting up a long-term presence on the moon and traveling even to Mars?
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental things that we're doing through this Callisto project, right, what we're demonstrating is that we can reduce the time to outcomes with, in our case, video. Instead of snapping a photo, sending it back to Earth, having a decision made, then them sending the result, that could be a 2-day round trip, if you will, just because of the process. If we can make this near real time, waiting 14 minutes for a signal to show up so I can see something and say yes, no, left, right, already reduces that by, I'm not a mathematician, 40 hours, let's call it that, right? So we can shorten that time to the magic that can happen. That's one example of where if we're going to have a presence on the moon or traveling to Mars, anything we can do to reduce time to action, that's just going to make things better. And in one of the talks I gave in Vegas about 3 weeks ago now at the Remars conference, I talked about bringing holographic technology in to drive exploration, give a 3-dimensional holographic representation of a rock on the surface of the moon, right? Or a component. We'll just make things go faster. I can see, understand, and say, flip it. Or note, we've seen this one before. You apply some of the AI that we have. For example, it knows you're John and I'm Jono on this call. Well, how about we use that computer vision and object recognition and say, this is a component we've seen before. This is a rock we've seen before, but that thing over there, that's unknown, right? So every element of what we may think of as everyday life down here just reduces that time to whoa, or realization or discovery. That's, I think, the impact we can have.
Well, this has been a really great interview. Jono, I think you've helped our listeners take communications to infinity and beyond. This has been a great interview. I'd like to thank our guest, Jono Luk, Vice President of Product Management at Webex. Thanks, Jono.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for listening to Constellations, the podcast from Kratos. If you like this interview, please subscribe, tell a friend, and give us a review.